The name Crazy Quilts comes from the fragmented appearance of the fabric patches created by the irregularly shaped pieces. The Crazy Quilt developed in Victorian America, reaching its peak in popularity during the 1880s and declined by 1900. Its rise in popularity was due to middle-class American women who were experiencing an increased amount of leisure time, and sewing was a socially acceptable activity. Crazy quilts were a way to showcase fancy stitching, and finished quilts were often displayed in the parlor, the most public room of a home. The cost of silk was declining while domestic cotton was increasing. By 1874, large quantities of silk were being produced in the U.S. Quilts reflected this new availability of silk. Newly discovered dyes also increased the number of colors available. In addition, imports from China and Japan were increasing. Crazy quilt motifs were heavily influenced by imports, seen through the use of fan motifs. Crazy quilts differed from earlier quilts in that they were constructed for decorative purposes only and were largely non-functional. Women spent as many as 1,500 hours constructing one crazy quilt. They were often displayed in the parlor to be closely admired by visitors. Fine needlework skills were taught to women, and the technique was highly prized, primarily among the Victorian housewife's duties in home decoration. Many magazines provided suggestions on decorating, including what was known as fancy work. By 1884, silk manufacturers were advertising kits of silk scraps to use in crazy quilts, which helped to increase their popularity. The materials used to construct crazy quilts includes silk, satin, velvet, brocade, and commemorative or souvenir ribbons. Motifs were often embroidered or painted in the patches. Further embellishments included buttons and beads, with each piece of fabric surrounded by decorative embroidery stitches. Motifs in Western designs included North American flowers and children's figures. American flag motifs and commemorative ribbons were also very popular. Although crazy quilts are known for their use of silks and velvets, many women used wools and plain fabrics that they had available. Crazy quilts continued to be made into the 20th century, and a trend can be seen in the shift from fancy silks to wools and all kinds of cotton. Irregularly shaped pieces are laid onto a foundation, usually muslin, and the overlapped edges are turned under and basted into place. The edges are then covered with decorative embroidery stitches. Foundation pieces were any size and shape. They're usually square in order to easily piece the squares together to form a large quilt. The size and shape of the fabric patch being sewn to the foundation does not matter. The fabric was not trimmed to 1/4 inch seam allowance. Instead, it was laid on the foundation and another fabric piece was laid over it and sewn into place. The fabric pieces were decorated with a painted or embroidered motif. Most of the designs for these motifs came from magazines or were purchased and transferred onto the fabric. The motifs were embroidered with an outline stitch, known today as the stem stitch. This stitch forms a line. This stitch was also used as red outlines against a white background for what is called redwork quilts, which were popular at the time as crazy quilts, and continue to be made today. Elaborate embroidery stitches surround each patch on crazy quilts. This embroidery adds decoration, but also functions to hold down and cover the raw edges of the fabric patches. Dates are often embroidered on crazy quilts. It can indicate the date the quilt was made, or is a date that commemorates an event that was special to the quilt maker. The silks that contribute to the beauty of the 19th century crazy quilts are also causing the damage we see today. 19th century silks were weighted. Their manufacturing process included metal salt baths, which placed metallic particles on the fibers. This is an inherent vice built into the fibers during manufacture, which causes its eventual decay. The silk splits apart. We cannot stop this decay. We can only slow it down. Conservators stable weak silks by sewing a thin tulle netting over the surface of the silk piece. This helps to hold the silk in its original position and decreases the amount of movement of the fibers. The blades of the fan are weak and covered with tulle to protect them. However, the velvet at the base is stable and doing well. The Crazy Quilt has a rich history that illustrates the Victorian era of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The Crazy Quilt style is still popular today for small projects such as pillows, and is a way to practice and showcase fancy embroidery.